God and Lucifer. Lucifer represents autonomy, self-reliance, and empiricism. God represents subjection, dependence, and dogma. So can people be trusted in their self-reliance? Are people untrustworthy to make their own decisions because they are under a conditioning that has been in place for generations? It is a multifaceted agenda by those who want to control. Well, they are under a conditioning, all right, but it's up to each and every individual to break free from it by his own free will. You cannot legislate people's personal choices. That kind of mindset is the foundation of the control and conditioning, which derives not from the scapegoat Lucifer, but from the evil of dogma and deity worship, which doesn't advocate thinking for oneself or self-efficiency. Ones that get caught in a vice are weak. But perhaps these trials and tribulations will strengthen their consciousness and serve as a necessary step on their spiritual path. The reason why dogma and deity worship are evil is because they foster a condition of weakness, deference, disempowerment, dependence, and other various negative traits and qualities of a slave. And being a slave as a default is the vice itself. This is the realized culmination of generations of slaves. For people to criticize and demonize the various method of freedom-seeking and deconstruction of the slave conditioning shows that people are, to be frank and blunt, obedient, fiercely loyal slaves. So I'm not sure what people's problems are. I don't think men should seek to be gods or angels. They should stop seeking to be an ideal and just be, and to learn and grow with what they can experience and with what they find out for themselves, and not fall into the traps of attachments, associations, and identifications. Like mythology and religion, the truth of God as God isn't good enough for man. For God as God doesn't have any recognizable fundamental features. It isn't similar to something. It can't be labeled. Mankind's dream of God is just an ideal of perfection, which is contrary to man's weaknesses and limitations. It's an ideal contrary to man's very nature. So man creates a God in his own ideal image of himself, and then expresses and projects this ideal image out onto the world as a means to give this God ideal some visceral palpability. An idea of duality where there really isn't any duality beyond a distinction of awareness. For something to be truly dual, the duals in question would have to be truly distinct and separate by their fundamental natures, and that simply is not the case. There's only one fundamental energy that cannot be created nor destroyed. Hence, there's no separate locations of good and evil where you will go after you die, depending on your behavior here on earth while you lived. Good and evil are both conditions right here and now. And to a large extent, your behavior will decide what kind of state you will exist in right here and now. And so, God as God isn't a distinctive state. Having no limits means you are undefinable, and hence all unlimited power becomes meaningless and useless. There is only one, and so all of the unlimited power and knowledge has no real function or utility other than masturbatory. Only by imposing ignorance and limitations can the one have any awareness of itself, the fallen angel. Just as man thinks of an ideal of God somewhere out there beyond himself and treats himself as the fallen ideal. Then come the holy stories. So this story of God versus Lucifer is a myth that does reflect the truth about man's path. The Old Testament is not the first time the story was told. It's a perennial mythology of mankind's struggle to step into a new age. Nope, that's not what I said, nor who is responsible. Your Abrahamic brothers are the cause of all that. The law is, do not violate others' free will, nor will anyone violate yours. But of course, we have a whole bunch of dim-witted, gullible, superstitious, religious, dogmatic folk that feel they have a right to dictate what people do with their own bodies and property. Evil is always found with the aggressor, and fighting fire with fire, or taking an eye for an eye, isn't an exception, despite how good it feels. Tit for tat or reposting isn't somehow a clean act. Revenge, justice, and retribution don't make this evil any more justified. Exercising aggression against another, especially another who is minding their own business, is the basis of evil. And that's what the precious church is the master of. That's why the Illuminati was created in the first place. So that philosophers, scientists, spiritualists, and other freethinkers could secretly gather and exchange ideas, and hopefully avoid getting murdered by the church. And why? Because we reject your ideas of a God, which is really just the basis you are using to try to rule people's lives. That's where nihilism got its bad name. A nihilist was one who rejected theism. And that's the fight here, that the church is the source of a lion's share of the evil in the world, and that it seeks to demonize all who oppose it. What you don't realize yet, and this is also the crux of the whole matter of what you are resisting, is that your entire reality is a creation of your mind. And thus being so, anything you experience in it is all from this same source. Okay, but now by knowing this, now you have an edge. You just have to find out how to utilize it. For everything in your so-called external world, there is a corresponding internal component. Because you are the source, not a byproduct of the reality. This is vitally important. I cannot stress enough how crucially consequential this is. This is a better premise that people could be starting from. Much nonsense could be avoided with such an approach, especially since it's already the case. It's not achieved, it's realized. Maybe when this is accepted as a new description, will one be able to be in a position to